Sewing for profit. Let's take a look at how you can begin earning money with the skills you've learned so far in your program. Factors that affect the price. Prices are geographically sensitive. Your local competition can also affect your price. Remember, not all seamstresses and designers may be in competition with you. Some might be designing or sewing cheerleading uniforms or dance uniforms, and maybe your focus is actually on bridesmaids and special occasion. You're not in competition with each other. And your skills and experience reflect in your quality. As you get faster over time, you will reap more profit with less time spent at a task. And as your quality improves, you will find that you can raise your prices as a reflection of this. Pricing for profit. In a home-based sewing business, the total cost of producing a product or a service is composed of three major factors. We're going to take a look at these, first being direct costs. These include all the materials and supplies that go into making a product. In a home-based sewing business, in most cases, the customer is responsible for supplying fabrics, patterns, and notions. However, there may be times when you provide a zipper, thread, interfacing buttons, hooks and eyes, or etc. And these costs may seem incidental, but they can add up quickly. Before you know it, you could be using several dollars worth of your own supplies in every garment that you make. We'll look some more closely at all of these factors. Salary is another one. You should pay yourself a set salary. After all, that's why you're in business, to make money, right? Your overhead and operating expenses include all the costs of running a business that are not directly related to the actual production of a specific product or service. In a home-based business, this would include your taxes, advertising, rent, insurance, business permits, maintenance and or repair of equipment, utilities like electric and your phone, professional assistants like an accountant or an attorney, and any other costs related to the overall operation of a business. Now there's quite simple formula used for pricing for your profit. And let's take a look at how this formula works. Let's call direct costs A, salary B, and your overhead expenses C. You add each of those together and you come up with your price. Now that we have the formula, let's put it into an example. Here, let's say your direct costs actually ran $95. You have a set salary of $240 for the said project and an overhead expenses of $83 into this one project. Added all together, this would be a total of $418. You may want to round it up to $425 for a more even number. Now don't forget that when charging the customer, you will need to include sales tax. In states that charge sales tax, you must collect and pay sales tax on items that you produced from materials you provide or on items that you purchased at wholesale cost for resale. The service you provide as a dressmaker, working with materials provided by your client, is not taxable. Let's take a closer look at each of the different parts of this formula. Direct costs are all the materials and supplies that go into making a garment. These are your taxable items, meaning if you purchase these at wholesale, you will need to collect the sales tax and from the end customer. If you purchase these from a fabric store and paid the full price, including the sales tax, then you do not need to collect additional sales tax. You will just pass on the full costs to the customer These can be the fabric for the project, maybe additional trims, notions, zippers, buttons, Velcro, buckles, elastic, etc. Pattern supplies that might make the job faster. Salary. We can figure salary in one of two methods. You can either do it by the job or by the hour. When doing it by the job, you will need to compile a list of sewing tasks based or priced out based on your hourly rate. So you still need to figure out what you would want to make per hour. Then you need to take the time to time yourself with each task to figure out how long does it take you to accomplish this. We will provide you with a chart in this lesson on my course Connection that you can refer to. Now remember, this would be an average chart. You might not be at that speed just yet on every task, but it would be a guideline for you to begin with. Or you can figure your salary based on the hour, keeping an accurate account of total time spent to complete a job. You would need to write down in a written log all the time it takes, whether you're searching for fabrics, doing the pattern work, figuring out the setting up the cutting, sewing, the ironing, every little task that goes into that project. Your overhead and operating expenses include all the costs of running your business that are not directly related to the product. Your taxes, rents, and utilities, advertising, sewing supplies like your thread, chalk, elastic, including your new equipment or repair of equipment over the year. We can assess these in two ways. Let's take a look first at the average method. In the average method of figuring your operating or overhead costs, it helps if you've been in business for a little while so you can base this on figures that are already reflective in what you are doing. But if you are just starting, you will have to do some guesstimating. To illustrate how overhead figures fit into the pricing picture, let's assume your annual business overhead costs are $3,000 and you're working on your business 1,000 hours per year. That means your average hourly overhead rate is $3 per hour. Let's apply that to a project. Say you're going to make a skirt for someone. The skirt that took you 2 hours to complete would therefore have a $6 overhead charge to the overall price that you would charge the client. In the other overhead operating expense method is figuring it by the percent. You determine your total overhead expenses for a year. Divide the total amount of your overhead expenses by the total amount of your direct costs plus salary for a year to get the percentage per hour that you should be charging, included with every dollar that you charge. For example, if you received $5,400 last year for direct costs and salaries, and you had $1,500 in overhead costs, you would divide $1,500 by $5,400 to get an overhead of 28%. That translates to 28 cents, which should be added to every dollar you charge. We recommend that you start now to document all the overhead costs that will affect the profitability of your business in the months and years to come. At the beginning of each new business year, analyze your overhead costs, then adjust your prices accordingly. For this class, we will provide basic pricing lists for you to use in the activities for your customer bid and the final invoice on the Dressy Situation project. The basic garment construction list will be used for the base pricing on a garment. Then refer to the second page, which is the construction pricing list, that will break out all the little extras if the garment had pockets, or different zipper installations as opposed to maybe buttons? Does the design have gathers anywhere? Cuffs on sleeves? Is lining included? Each of these take additional time and effort, and you add on each of these to the base price. So in this case, you find the dress price. Is the dress lined? Add the lining, additional construction pricing. You will utilize both of these lists then to come up with the total labor for the job. But when you do your invoice, with the bid and the invoice, you also need to assess and include the direct costs for the project and any of the estimated overhead expenses.